Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to day one of reInvent. Thank you for being here. We are super excited to be here with you today. We're going to be talking to you about customer technology journeys and different personas and how we work with them here at AWS. So first, I want to introduce us. My name is Teresa Meyer. I lead a team of solution architects that are focused on customers new to AWS and helping them get started and really build their foundations with AWS. I'm joined today by Eric Espeseth, who is another leader here focused on similar things. Eric himself was a customer, and so he's got a unique perspective that he can bring in working with our customers as they migrate to AWS. Next is Saurabh Agnoti, and Saurabh is a leader here at AWS with over 18 years experience working in migrations and helping customers with their journey to AWS. And last but not least is Jay Vale. Jay is one of our experts in data and analytics and has similar experience. So we're super excited to be here today. I'm going to talk through the flow that we're going to go through in this session. We're going to introduce you to our core personas and share some of their pain points. Next, we'll take you through how we work with our customers to address those pain points in their journey. We'll analyze some best practices for those pain points, share some of our real customer use cases related to those pain points, and then finally talk through some architectural patterns and guidances that we work with our customers on. So first, let's introduce you to our core personas. We've got 4 core personas that we're going to talk about today. The first is who we affectionately like to call Data Center Dave. So as his name applies, Data Center Dave is an expert in all things data centers. He has established his career on building and maintaining data centers. But Dave is a customer similar to Dave has realized that the backup and recovery requirements and uptime requirements that his company is asking him to maintain, he needs a little help. And so how we usually begin working with customers of this persona is in that backup and recovery space. So customers similar to Dave are really looking for how can they ensure greater uptime and look for that data disaster recovery strategy in 2025. Next, we have energetic Elsa. Elsa and her team have some experience with AWS. They have mostly engaged with AWS in that data center disaster recovery, backup recovery scenario. But Elsa understands that there's more that AWS can offer her and her team and her company. And so they're really looking to take the next steps in migrating some of their workloads to AWS, really focusing on cost optimization, as well as those requirements around data governance and regulatory requirements that her company is asking her to face. And so we'll go through some of the strategies that we work with our Elsa, energetic Elsa personas on how we guide them into those first steps into migrating to AWS. Next, we've got strategic Ian. So Ian is focused on growth. So him and his company have already migrated a significant number of workloads to AWS. And so they're very familiar with the AWS platform and the migration path that we have set out for them. Mostly what they've done, though, has been in a lift and shift capacity. And so customers like Ian, we really engage with them to help them focus on how do they leverage those cloud-native applications to really begin to take advantage of cost optimization and the power that AWS has to offer their company. And so we typically work with customers in the strategic Ian persona around that space of migrating to cloud-native solutions, but then we also work with their lines of business to really help them understand what are some new opportunities that their company can begin to explore while leveraging AWS technologies? And then last but not least, we've got AWS expert Emma. So as her name implies, Emma's company and Emma herself is very familiar with AWS. And in some cases, these companies are even born in the cloud, like we used to say. And so Typically, the way that we engage with customers that are in the expert Emma persona is around how do we help them with their data strategy and their Gen AI and Gen BI strategies. Really focused on how can we help them develop new technologies that give them a competitive advantage over their customer or their competitors. And so we'll definitely be walking through today what we have to offer in the Gen AI and Gen BI space for our customers, helping them to get that competitive advantage. So before I hand it over to Eric to talk through how we actually begin to work with customers in these phases, I'd like to take a poll. It really helps us here on stage know who's in the audience and helps us tailor our conversation for you. So just by show of hands, how many of you in the audience can really relate to the Data Center Dave persona and his cowboy hat here? Excellent. Thank you. What about Elsa, energetic Elsa? Anybody already worked with AWS a little bit and is really more focused on migrations? We've got a couple. Perfect. Strategic Ian, you've already migrated a bunch of things to AWS. You feel like you're really getting your feet under you, and now it's time to move to more cloud native. Excellent. And then any experts in here that would classify themselves as AWS expert Emmas? Less so, but that's the whole point. There's still quite a few. So thank you. Really appreciate that. Like I said, I'm going to turn it over to Eric now to walk through how we actually begin working with these personas.
All right, thank you, Teresa. So we're going to start with Data Center Dave, and as you may recall, Dave is relatively new to the cloud, so he's going to have a lot of questions, and the AWS account team is going to be able to help Dave understand what the cloud can do for him, start understanding how to anticipate cost in the cloud, and also start to figure out how to help Dave and his team become more familiar with the cloud. So the first thing that the AWS would help Dave with is to get an understanding of what that ecosystem on-premise would look like so that we can help start developing a disaster recovery scenario that would help Dave meet his SLAs and SLOs and make sure that there was a high confidence that AWS could solve that problem for Dave. And they would then go ahead and execute that solution. For Elsa, Elsa's already had a successful DR solution on AWS, and she's much more interested in making sure that she is setting up her AWS environment according to industry best practices, as well as making sure that they're meeting her compliance and governance objectives. Security is going to be really important for Elsa as well at this stage, and she would work with the account team to start understanding what does her current environment look like and start designing what her new environment would look like. So part of that is going to be education, and this is where the AWS account team could help Elsa very significantly through the Cloud Foundation Accelerator, which is a series of modules that talk about the different aspects that go into the technical components that put a good foundation in place to grow in AWS. We would also help Elsa understand how to set up a multi-account strategy anchored on control tower and landing zones, and create a plan for her to go ahead and do that to put those pieces in place. And then we'd make sure we would work with Elsa to implement the control tower and landing zone. Ian is a little further along. He's already got confidence in his AWS environment. He's got governance. He's got compliance. He has a high degree of confidence in his security. He's much more interested in figuring out how to leverage strategic workloads in the cloud, how to modernize those applications. So it's really important that we work with Ian to help him understand what are the applications that the line of business is using, and where are the pain points that those line of business owners are experiencing so that we can help figure out how to solve those problems. A big part of this would be executing what we refer to as an OLA, or an optimization and licensing assessment. This takes a look at the ecosystem that's running, understands what the utilization of those assets are, as well as the licenses associated with that, so that we can help Ian make informed decisions around modernizing his applications. We would then take the output of that OLA and present a strategy and a plan on how to implement a modernization strategy within AWS. So, we would prioritize that for the most impact. Moving on to Emma. So Emma is done all of the heavy lifting to get AWS up and running. She has control tower in place. She has governance, compliance, security, has her strategic applications running in AWS, but Emma is really interested in innovating. And this is something that AWS can really help Emma with because we have experience dealing with customers from a variety of different industries. So we can help Emma understand who are her customers, what are the things that they're important to them, what are their pain points, and we can then work to help Emma identify innovation opportunities. Deep diving into those customers, what are the current market trends, or what are other industries doing that might be applicable? We would help her by working on a digital innovation session, a working backwards session. We could perform an executive briefing where we would bring in AWS experts to help understand what's going on in the industry. We could do a culture of innovation session. And coming out of that, we would work with Emma to identify 3 workloads that would be good candidates and opportunities for innovation. And then we would work with Emma to build a business case to present to the C-suite and start innovating. So with that, let's dive into the architectural patterns and guidance associated with the different personas. And for that, I will turn it over to Saurabh. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. All right, so based on the personas and the customer journeys that Eric and Teresa just talked about, we have categorized the workload into 4 different categories. The first category is what we are calling as starter workloads, and this resonates with the persona of Data Center Dave. And here we will talk about backup and restore and disaster recovery. The second category is technical foundations, and this resonates with energetic Elsa. And we are going to talk about multi-account strategy, identity, control tower, and networking in this. The third category is strategic workloads. And here we will talk about lift and optimize shift, the serverless workloads, and contact center solution on AWS. And the fourth category resonates with expert Emma, who is looking to do the innovation for the company. And in this category, we will dive into the workloads such as the data analytics, generative AI, and BI. So starting off with the first category, which is the starter workload, which resonates with the persona of Data Center Dave. So Dave wants to implement a disaster recovery strategy for his organization. So from the approaches standpoint, there are 4 approaches that we have for the DR. Backup and restore, pilot light, warm standby, and active. All these strategies are based on their RPO and RTO objectives. RPO stands for recovery point objective, which means that how much of the data can you afford to lose? And RTO stands for recovery time objective, which means that how much of a downtime can you afford? So based on that, the backup and restore is the most common one in which you back up your existing applications and servers to a vault. And you can recover whenever you need to. The second strategy, which is the pilot light. In this strategy, you do a continuous replication of your data to AWS Cloud, but the application servers are not running yet. Only the continuous replication of the data is happening, which is why it has a RPO of minutes and RTO of hours. For the warm standby, you do the continuous replication of the data as well as the application servers are running. However, they are not running in a fully scaled up mode. Again, which is why it has RPO and RTO of minutes. Now with the fourth strategy, which is active, it has an RPO of seconds and RTO of near real time. And this is when you're serving your workloads from multi-region of AWS. The traffic is being actively served from multiple regions. So looking at this disaster recovery spectrum, when it comes to the backup and restore from on-premises to AWS. So towards the left hand of the slide, you see the on-premises, and towards the right, we have AWS Cloud. So Data Center Dave wants to back up the applications and servers from on-premise to AWS Cloud. And the question that Dave asks is, do I have an existing backup software that has the AWS Cloud native support? And if the answer is yes to that question, then Dave can use that existing backup software to back up the data on cloud. But if the answer is no, or for some reason Dave decide not to go with the existing backup software, then Dave can utilize AWS Storage Gateway to back up the data on AWS Cloud. AWS Storage Gateway provides you that hybrid cloud data storage solution. It also provides the local cache for low latency access. It is compatible with many types such as file, volume, and tape. And it also integrates with a lot of storage services such as Amazon S3, Amazon S3 Glacier, and EBS. So now Dave has completed the backup and restore, but Dave is even more excited, and he is looking for more and more. So now Dave wants the RPO of active-active, RTO of warm standby, but at the cost of pilot light. And this is where AWS Elastic Disaster Recovery, or we call it a DRS service, comes to rescue. So AWS DRS service will monitor your primary environment for any failures, and it will provide you an automated DR option. And in the next slide, we are going to talk about how the high-level architecture diagram, or how does the DRS works. So in this high-level architecture diagram, when you start implementing DRS, the first thing that you do is you install the AWS replication agent on the source servers. Installation of these replication agent does not require any reboot of the servers, or it does not impact the performance. And once these replication agents are running on the source servers, they start continuously replicating the block level data into AWS Cloud. The data that they replicate goes to the staging area subnet, which is automatically spun up by the DRS for you. And and the staging area subnet is designed in such a way that it provides an affordable storage as well as compute solution. It minimizes the compute to just maintain that continuous block level replication, but at the same time, it compresses the storage to provide you an affordable solution. And with a click on the DRS console, you can now recover your instances into the recovery subnet. And this process typically takes just a few minutes. So out of many customers that use Storage Gateway and Elastic Disaster Recovery, these are the two references that we have. Kellogg's, which is an AWS customer, they were able to reduce their backup cost by 90%, and they eliminated the traditional backup solution using the AWS Storage Gateway. On the other hand, Tyler Technologies used AWS Elastic Disaster Recovery, and they were able to recover their mission-critical workloads 12 times faster compared to what they used to have. So now we have helped Dave implement a backup and restore and a DR strategy. And before Dave can do more, energetic Elsa comes in, and she wants to ensure that before they scale out the cloud adoption, we are having a solid foundation from the technical standpoint. So before we dive into the technical foundation, let's understand why multi-account strategy is important when you're new to AWS. So imagine that you have a house with many rooms, and all the stuff that you have, you just plan to put in one house. In the beginning, it might seem convenient, but over a period of time, as you start buying more stuff, accumulating more stuff, it will be hard for you to organize that and keep it secure. So similarly, when you have the single AWS account, it results in the gray boundaries, complicated permission sets, and there is often a resource collision, which is why a multi-account approach is beneficial. It is more effective to manage your AWS infrastructure. You can group the workloads based on their business purpose and ownership. So much like that big house, a bedroom is for sleeping, a kitchen is for the food, and so on, right? So you can group your accounts based on the business purpose and the ownership. A multi-account structure also promotes the innovation and agility because it allows your teams to independently work and increase their speed. From the cost management standpoint as well, a multi-account structure is very effective because now you can measure the cost of your workloads and your environments. You can segregate them out. So knowing that, Elsa wants to implement the multi-account strategy. The first step that she does is AWS Control Tower. AWS Control Tower can help you spin up a well-architected multi-account environment in less than 30 minutes. It has 400 plus controls out of the box that you can apply to improve your security and compliance posture. In order to spin up the control tower, we recommend to start with a management account. So you start with a management account and you set up the control tower over there with just 4 simple steps. And as you are in the process of setting up the control tower, under the hood, it uses the AWS organization. And there is a foundational organization unit that is created. In this scenario, we are calling it as security OU. But within that security OU, there are 2 AWS accounts it spin up. One is the log archive account, and the second one is the audit account. The whole purpose of spinning up these 2 accounts is that we are going to centralize the logs from all the different child accounts into one place and give access to the security and the auditors so that they can do the analysis on these accounts. Now, once this baseline control tower architecture is complete, now ELSA can bring in that existing disaster recovery account into the control tower governance. And in order to do that, ELSA uses an account factory feature of control tower. And so using account factory, you can spin up new accounts, or you can also enroll an existing account and bring it under the same governance model of the control tower. And finally, we need the access for the users. And AWS IAM Identity Center, it used to be called as SSO earlier, provides that single sign-on access to all the child accounts. You don't have to really provision the IAM users in every single child account. You can just so you can just provision the users in just the management account, and from there, you can grant access to all the child accounts. AWS IAM Identity Center also integrates with the external identity providers such as Okta, Azure AD, and so on. So now, ELSA has set up the multi-account structure, and now she wants to ensure that the networking architecture is baseline. So on one side, we have the corporate data center. On the other side, we have the existing DR account. What we generally recommend is to set up a dedicated network account for the organization. So this dedicated network account will act as a centralized hub, and then it will have further spokes, right? So you can deploy AWS Transit Gateway on this dedicated network account and connect that to your corporate data center using a VPN or AWS Direct Connect, and then connect the spoke back to the VPC of the disaster recovery account. And like that, you can keep on adding your rest of the accounts, app dev accounts, the data analytics accounts, and so on. And finally, you can also have an inspection VPC and a firewall running over there, which can inspect the inbound as well as outbound traffic. So up until now, we talked about Dave. We addressed Dave's need. We addressed ELSA's need as well. And now we are going to talk about the workload that strategic Ian cares about. So one of the objectives that Eric talked about for Ian is to minimize the technical debt. And in order to do that, there is a lift and optimize shift with AWS that we recommend, right? So based on the customer like Ian, we have seen some challenges across. Often customers who are doing the lift and shift to AWS of their data center, they run into challenges of schedule overruns. The project can run upwards of more than 18 months. The customers are looking to find the best guidance and find the best experts in the field. And sometimes they need a centralized place to collaborate with their internal teams as well as external partners. And that's where AWS Migration Hub really helps. AWS Migration Hub helps you plan, track, and assess the migrations to AWS. It really acts as your comprehensive assistant in your migration journey. So let's understand how does AWS Migration Hub works. The first service that we have is AWS Application Discovery Service. So consider that now you're building upon the same house example. Now we are just moving the house, and you have stuff scattered all over the place into the multiple storage units, into your friend's place, into other house, and so on, right? So AWS Application Discovery Service is really like if you want to hire a bunch of explorers who are going to go out there, look at your assets and inventory and make a list of them, it is essentially what AWS Application Discovery Service do. When you use the AWS Application Discovery Service, it starts maintaining the assets and the inventory of those assets for you on your behalf. And once you have those assets inventory, then AWS Migration Hub applications will give you a centralized dashboard where you can view the applications and its dependencies as well. And once you have these two, then comes the AWS Migration Hub recommendation. So AWS Migration Hub recommendation is really like that professionals, mover and packer, who are going to pack the stuff and move the things for you, right? And they will provide you the best recommendation on how to do it. So using AWS Migration Hub recommendation, you will get the recommendations on what applications are a good use case for replatform, what applications are good use case of rehost, and so on. And finally, moving a house is a very complex and cumbersome process, and you need a detailed plan and a checklist. And in order to do that, we have AWS Migration Hub Journeys, which will give you a detailed plan and a checklist and help you give that seamless migration. So this slide really puts it all together. On this slide, as we classify the migration journey, it is 4 phases: assess, mobilize, migrate, and modernize. And on this slide, what you see is the AWS provided migration tools, Migration Hub tools, and then also the partner provided tools. And all you have to do is pick up a template, use one of these tools in each of the phases, and then it will help you out with your migration journey. So for Aeon, we have minimized the technical debt. We have helped Aeon to move the things and the data center and the servers to the cloud. And now Aeon is asking for even more, right? So the first workload that we are going to talk about, or this category we will talk about, is the serverless workloads on AWS. But before we dive deeper into serverless workloads, we will talk about why serverless. Prior to joining AWS, I used to have a development background. And if I remember those times, if we have to build the application, we used to rack and stack the servers on data center. We used to do the security patching or baseline the server. And then on top of that, we used to install the relevant software. Then came the cluster management headache. Then came the automated scaling headache, right? With serverless, all that pain kind of goes away. So you don't have to provision any infrastructure. There is no automatic scaling required for you to build and develop because it automatically scales and up and down. You pay for the value, and it is highly available as well as secure. So if you look at this table right here, if you use serverless services to build your workloads, then a lot of responsibility is taken care by AWS. And it reduces the operational overhead for the customer. Primarily, customers have to focus on their business logic as well as just the APIs. So if I have to classify the serverless application, essentially you can classify them into 2 broad categories. The first one is the API-driven use cases, and the second one is the event-driven architecture. For the API-driven use cases, Aeon is looking to build a mobile application. And when Aeon wants to build a mobile application, on the client that you see is the front end of the mobile application. And the way client communicates to AWS Cloud is via the APIs. And we have Amazon API Gateway, which is a fully managed API Gateway service by AWS. It acts as the front door to those front-end clients. So when the request, let's say that the client wants to raise a request to the backend that get me the data from the contact table. So when client sends a HTTP request to Amazon API Gateway, that request is then translated into the event payload and then passed over to Amazon Lambda function. So AWS Lambda is another serverless service where you essentially write your business logic and code. And when AWS Lambda receives that request, it sends the request to the Amazon DynamoDB table from where the data is read. And then the response is processed further by Lambda and then further passed on back to client. So this is one architecture of a microservice. And like that, you can scale this architecture out and have multiple Lambda functions to create a distributed microservices architecture. The second one is the event-driven architecture. So Ian has a use case in which Ian is looking to process the files. And these files are images and videos. So in the event-driven architecture, it responds to the events. So when the file upload is happening in the Amazon S3 bucket, there is a trigger in the Amazon S3 bucket which is configured, and that trigger invokes a AWS Lambda function. From AWS Lambda function, it passes on the object URL of that Amazon S3 bucket to a service of AWS, which is called Amazon Recognition, that is used to process the images as well as videos or do the analysis of those. And once the analysis results are sent back to the Lambda function, then those results are further stored in the Amazon DynamoDB. So if you notice in this architecture, things are happening in the reactive manner. It is event-driven. So Ian has now built the serverless workloads as well. And out of hundreds of thousands of the customers that currently are building their applications and workloads using serverless, these are some of the common names that you might have heard about. And this is a famous quote from our CEO that if Amazon.com had to start over today, we will build it on serverless. With that, I'm going to pass the mic to my friend Jay, and he will talk about the next step for strategic AI.
Thank you, Saurabh. Before we dive into this Amazon Connect solution, please raise your hands if you heard about Amazon Connect or you're using Amazon Connect already. Oh, that's a lot. Awesome. So this is one of the strategic workloads I'm going to dive deep into. Also, I'm going to dive deep into some of the innovative workloads as well. So before we dive into the Amazon Connect, let's see why we build this solution. Why do we need Amazon Connect? So we listened to our customers, and we observed from the existing context center solutions, there are some pain points. From the customer's perspective, they basically said that there's an inconsistency and there's a lot of repetitive experience across these solutions, meaning that you call them, you give some idea, but then when you chat, you have to give the same information again and again. People are feeling not very frustrated. That's one. Then from the agent's perspective, context center agent's perspective, they have many disjointed applications. Like for an example, they might have CRM solution, and then they have the context center solution. Now they don't talk with each other. Now they have a hard time like connecting those dots. From the administrators or the supervisor's perspective, again, they want to connect the data, but now because of these disjointed applications, all this data is disconnected, limited, and incomplete. So they cannot make much sense out of it. That's where Amazon Connect comes in. So what is Amazon Connect? Again, Amazon Connect is a very simple self-serving UI you can configure in your own organization. And then under the hood, in fact, it delivers a dynamic and personal automated customer experience, which is going to help your agent's life so much, also the customer's life. Plus, under the hood, it builds on an AI model. Why is it important? Because it's going to learn over time what customers want, what agents want. So based on that, it can make some recommendations. On top of all these things, it also provides some basic native analytics and some dashboard functionality, so you can use that and understand how the context center solution is working so far. So this is a sample architecture looks like. If you want to take a picture of slides, please feel free. Again, here, what happens is customers make a call. They can make a call through their cell phone, mobile, or they can chat through their computers. And when they chat, it's going to connect to Amazon Connect first. But then, when it hits the Amazon Connect service, it's going to call the Amazon Connect flow. What it does is, it's basically an orchestration service. It's going to call multiple AI services under the hood, also the Lambda function, what Saurabh mentioned multiple times. So why do you need all these services? Imagine when I call, we want to convert the voice to text. So we have some AI services, like for example, Amazon Poly, that can do that. Imagine you're texting or typing. You want to convert the text to voice. That's where the Amazon Lex comes in. Now, if you call, you want to understand what this customer really looking for. What's their customer lifetime value looks like. You want to find those things. For that, what will happen is the Lambda function under the hood, again, this same orchestration service can call the Lambda function. It can go to a data store and pull the preferences, customer preferences, agent preferences. So we can make valuable decisions based on that. Imagine we have done with all those things. What is next step? We want to take the call script and save that into the S3 bucket. Why do you need to save it? Because when you save it there, like Saurabh mentioned earlier, maybe the event-driven architecture or some of the architectures, we should be able to do some real-time analytics, call analytics. Plus, this is where the cool thing's going to happen. Imagine you have all this data available. Now you want to make some natural language questions. Like for an example, last year, which customer segment had most dropped calls? We want to find that. You want to find that natural language question, you can ask that using Amazon Connect for Q. Again, Amazon Q for Connect, I'm sorry. Again, this is a service, I'm going to dive deep into Amazon Q very soon. This is a generative AI service. It's implemented on top of Amazon Connect to provide this extra experience or the best experience. So these are some of the customers, again, tens of thousands of customers using Amazon Connect and 10 million contact centers, 10 million contact center interactions per day, it's happening. So you all can use it as well. Talk with your SAs. Let's dive into innovative workloads from Emma's perspective. I know there are so many Emmas here, you raise your hands. And specifically, Teresa mentioned about generative AI, generative BI. I'm going to dive into all those things. But before we dive into any of those things, what is the most important asset is data. Why? Because data is growing exponentially, and it's coming from many different sources. Also, data has many different dimensions, like for an example, vector data, scalar data, or structured, unstructured, all kind of dimensions. And then the data is used by multiple stakeholders, customers, board of directors, everybody want to know about data, right? So how do you manage the data? That's where the data lakehouse architecture comes in. What it is, basically, in the center of the lakehouse architecture, we have S3, simple storage service. It has 11.9 durability. It can scale unlimited, almost unlimited, also a very cost-effective solution. So from these all different sources, we can bring the data into the S3 with our purpose-built services, and then we can build some governance controls around it. Eric was talking about building some governance control. How do we do that? Again, we can tell who can access what data at the row level or even cell level. So how do we do that? Let's dive into an architecture. So now you can see some of the data sources here. Like these are like a SQL, NoSQL, and then some of the mobile data stores and the streaming data, flat files, all these data are coming in. Now first we need to ingest the data in. That's where the purpose-built ingestion service is coming in. Like for an example, if you want to bring the data from your relational databases, you can use database migration service. What it does, you can basically tell like, hey, dump all the data into the S3, or do it on a schedule basis or ongoing basis. You can set your own schedule. Plus, if you have streaming data, like for an example, you're getting some tweets data or something, you want to get that. That's where the streaming services comes in, like Amazon Kinesis services, or manage Kafka. Or if you have some flat files. I used to work for a healthcare company. We have these big flat files we transfer. For that, we can use AWS Transfer Family. So with all these services, we can bring the data in and put them into S3 bucket. What is next? We need to crawl through the data and see the structure. So for that, again, we'll crawl through the data, find the structure. Once we find the structure, we need to save this logical structure somewhere. That's where the AWS Glue comes in. It's going to do all this work for you and create a logical structure so you can ask questions. Plus, imagine you want to bring some external data sources and you want to merge that data with the current data and ask some intelligent questions. That's where the Glue Data Brew comes in. So now you have all this data available. You did the logical structure. Now you want to do some analytics. You can do it with Kinesis Analytics on the streaming data, or if you want to run some online analytical, like a long-running processing queries, OLAP queries, you can use our EMR service. Or even if you want to create some nice dashboards for your board of directors or anybody, you can use QuickSight. Or Or, as you are expecting, if you want to run some Gen AI application, you want to store them in a vector data, so like open search service, you can do that. So that said, let's see what this Gen AI looks like. Pretty sure you all are talking about Gen AI quite a bit, but I would love to dive deep and understand like what are the business use case for Gen AI? There are 4 reasons we would use Gen AI. 1, new experiences. What does it mean? New experiences for the customers, also new experience for the employees. 2, productivity. How to improve the productivity for the employees, also other team members. The third one is insights. How do you find the insight from this large amount of data? Finally, creativity. How to create new content. It could be images, or it could be movies, or text. How do you create this? For all these 4 different areas, we can use Gen AI. Let's see what are the possible applications can meet these business needs from AWS perspective, or in general. First, let's think about the customer experiences. That's where the chatbots comes in. Pretty sure you all heard about when you go to any website that says something popping up, you can ask questions. But this chatbot are a little bit different. They answer you very intelligently based on all the contents available, understand the context. Plus some virtual assistants, conversation tools, all these are coming under this category. How to boost employees' performance? I don't know how many developers around here. I used to be a developer. I remember like many times I read the code and I made some mistakes and it would take a long time to debug the code, right? But these code assisting tools, what it does, before you even make the mistake, it gives you the pop-ups. Also, it writes the codes for you. So it helps us with our performance, also productivity itself. Optimizing the business processes. Again, this is especially for the lawyers, accountant, or anybody, if they want to process like a lot of documents, this is where this comes in. Again, Gen AI can help you with that. Or fraud detection. This is also possible. I'm going to take you guys through a simple architecture for Gen AI. Again, before I dive in, I want to tell you a story. Think about this. You all are working for a big, large railroad company. And they have 10 terabytes of data, which is a policy document. This is a real use case. In fact, I worked on that one. And then the business person wanted to ask a question, what does blue book rule means? It's very much like when you see a green flag, you can go, or green light, you can go. Very much like that. In the railroads, there's a rule called blue book rule. They want to find that. So how to build a solution that can address this question? So first of all, we have this large document. We need to take the document and bring them into, create some embeddings. What does embedding means? We take this text, convert that into numerical vector with semantics, meaning that we're not losing the semantic meaning of the specific paragraph or sentence. But we are converting them into vector. But then we chunk them into chunk vectors, and then we are going to store them into a vector data store. Once you have that document stored in the vector data store, then guess what? You can ask questions. So when you ask the question, again, LLM take that question and create an embeddings for that question. What is blue book rule? It create the vector conversion, also the relationship between those words. Blue flag rule, meaning that it's a one word, blue flag. It's one word, and then it's a rule. We want to look for a rule specifically, right? It'll create this context itself. But then it creates the chunk vectors and go and ask the question in the vector data store. Then we'll get the relevant response back with the probability, how relevant they are, and then we can present it to the customers. This is the logical architecture looks like. Let's see how can we do it with AWS. Again, from your right side, you can see that, like for an example, we have this SageMaker. What it can do, it can take the documents and it can create the embeddings for you. And it can also create the chunk vectors. Now you can store all of them into a vector data store. It could be Amazon Open Search Service, or Neptune, or Amazon Aurora. All these are vector data stores you can store, or any third-party tools. You can save them there too. Now, then you can create, again, you can go and ask the question using Bedrock API. And then with API, again, it'll create the embeddings for you, create the vector chunks for your question. It goes and asks the question to the vector data store, get the response back, give it to the customers. Cool. So we talk about Gen AI quite a bit. again, Teresa mentioned about Gen BI too. I would love to dive deep into this area too. So before I dive deep, how many of you heard about Amazon Q or using Amazon Q? Wow, quite a bit. That's awesome. One of my favorite services, in fact. So Amazon Q can go with many AWS services, but for this specific use case or this specific business need, we are integrating Amazon Q with our QuickSight. This is another sample architecture. But it does, again, in this architecture, we are talking about some document processing and creating some dashboards. But again, very much like the previous use case I mentioned, we have different sources of data that's coming in. We have purpose-built services. We are taking the data and writing that into S3, our data lake. And then, even inside the S3, right, we have this something called access points. What are those? Like directories. We put them there. Now, sort of mentioned about the event-driven architecture. This is where the event bridge comes in. What is that? It's an orchestration service. It's going to call multiple Lambda functions, the serverless functions, sequentially or in parallel based on the business need, and then it goes and read inside the bucket and do the processing. Imagine you have some image, and that has some text. You want to pull the text out of the image. You can use Textract or Claude 3. And then once you get that one, you want to store the data into some data store. Again, you can call a Lambda to save that into a data store. Here I put Amazon Kendra specifically because it is an implementation of OpenSearch service, but it's fully managed. So you put it there, or Aurora, and then you connect that to QuickSight to create the nice dashboard. Guess what? Now the QuickSight queue comes in. You can ask some natural language questions, such as, for an example, this is one of the examples, right? You pulled all this business sales data and you want to ask, what are the top segments? You ask this question. So what does that mean? Top segments could be top 90 percentile, which means it can do some calculations behind the scene. It creates a bar chart here for you. It could be a pie chart if you want. You can modify the chart. Also, it does some basic calculations as well. That's one use case with Gen BI. This is one of my favorite use cases, in fact, creating some stories. Storytelling is very important in the business world. In fact, this one, AI-assisted storytelling in QuickSight is pretty cool, very, very powerful feature. Imagine you have all the sales data, especially the campaign data, and you want to find how is the campaign performance over time. Also, you want to find who are the top account managers. Also, you want to ask, how can you improve the campaign performance itself? If you want to ask all these questions, you can ask it out. Guess what? It's going to create a nice story with a nice spider chart. If you want, you can refine that, and then you can take this and present it to the board of directors. So that said, over 100,000 customers using QuickSight right now. So can you? Play it out. Again, there are some free versions available. Play with your company, talk with your SAs. They'll happily give you some demos. And this is one of my favorite stories. In fact, BMW, what they did is they exactly took the storytelling functionality and they created these stories based on the sales data and such as their sales data, and they created some outcomes. So they were able to improve the business performance drastically. So that's it. Let's recap quickly what we could do. So for all the devs here, or people who aspire to be dev, a couple of things we would recommend. One, meet the AWS partners, ISV solutions, also your solutions architect at the new to AWS kiosk. There's a kiosk in the Expo Center. Plus, attend NTA316, Resilience Design. It's in a good session to attend to learn about DR. For Elsa's here, if you want to understand the foundation, technical foundation, again, ask your SA team about, or meet your SA team at the kiosk and ask about the RESCO workshops. Our team is doing a really good job, and if possible, talk with them about joining the RESCO workshop now or later on, all good. If possible, attend NTA406R. Again, this is landing zone setup process from zero to hero. Also NTA402R, using AWS budget to stay cost optimized. Who doesn't want that? For the ENs here, again, meet your SA at the new to AWS kiosk and ask your account team about MAP program. This is an investment program for your company. If possible, at an NTA314, it's an Amazon Connect session. For all the EMAs, ask your team about EBCs, EBAs, working backward sessions. Also, if possible, at an NTA315, building AWS generative AI application powered by Anywhere Data. Also, NTA304R, boost your Kubernetes journey with EKS blueprints for CDK and Amazon Q. So that's a two ask. One, please fill your survey or in your mobile app, because that data is going to help us to improve our session over time. Two, if you want to learn about the new to AWS Amazon journey, scan this QR code. This will take you to a URL that will give you some of the pre-built solutions. All these things, all free. All these solutions are available. You can access them. On behalf of our team, Teresa, Eric, Saurabh, thank you.